Isn't it exciting? It is, the second to last week in November, the second to last week in spring. Summer is just around the corner. I'm having flashbacks to burning my feet walking across the asphalt and getting those little prickles in your feet from the only hunger weed. But hey, that is still in our future, but only just. Joining us on the program now, Phil Duncan from weatherwatch.co.nz. Phil, kia ora. Thanks for your time.
Kia ora, thanks for having me. I just want to say, when I was a kid, my memory of the summer was my mother telling me off for getting all the tar seals stuck to my feet,
Ah,
which is
yes.
going to be a pretty New Zealand thing, right?
Exactly. So such happy memories, but hey, summer is around the corner. Can I just say though, when I read the weather forecast at the top of the hour, the most common phrases were thunderstorms and hail. This doesn't sound very summery, but I suppose to be fair, it's not summer yet, is it?
No, it's not. And this is what spring is all about. Spring's all about winter sort of trying to hold on, but it's losing the fight, and summer coming in. And that mixture of warm and cold produces this unsettled weather, the windier weather, the sudden downpours. That's what happens every year. Doesn't always hit New Zealand, that kind of stuff. Some years we have quite a settled spring and it doesn't feel like much of a spring. This year is about the most classic spring we've had in a decade.
Yeah.
And so we are back to wild and windy at times, changeable temperatures, hot one day, cold the next. But what you'd normally see once you get to about November, going into December, is that high pressure is coming in more often, the dry spells are lasting longer, and the cold snaps just don't have as much oomph. So that's hopefully what we're heading towards. I actually think spring this year is going to hang on, and I
Okay.
think December is going to be spring-like. That doesn't mean everybody's going to have an unsettled, awful December. It just means still expect the odd cold front, still expect the odd dusting of snow on the mountains, and maybe getting some single-digit daytime highs in the very south. So we're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah.
Winter is still sort of a faint memory, but it is still there and it's not quite gone yet. But I think we are now onto that more summer side of things. We should start to see the weather pattern getting a little more what I call gluggy. It just slows down a lot more.
Gluggy is good, I suppose, from a weather point of view. Hey, this coming weekend, though, is, well, in some ways, it's the last weekend in November, if not the last weekend in spring. Look, I don't mind some thunderstorms and hail when I'm inside working, but what's this weekend looking like, Phil?
Actually, it's not too bad this weekend. There's a high pressure zone over the Tasman. It's a very big, strong high. It's not over the top of us, though. It's parked in the Tasman. That placement leaves a southwesterly wind across the country. It'll be a little southerly in some areas, a little more westerly in others. But generally speaking, when you look at the sort of the big map of New Zealand, you see this big southwest flow coming straight in and over the top of us. So that means there will be a few showers around, a little bit of a breeze here and there, but nothing severe. There's no severe thunderstorms or hail or dramatic things like that. It is looking mostly settled. Actually, I shouldn't say no thunderstorms. There might possibly be an afternoon one around Gisborne somewhere at the weekend.
Okay.
That's not even locked in, but possible on Sunday. But generally, it's not looking too unsettled. So if you can handle a bit of cloud and maybe the wind picking up a little bit, not majorly, you'll probably be okay this weekend. It's just a few showers around in that southwesterly flow. Similar story going into next week as well. We've still got a mixture of high pressure around us, those westerly winds coming back in, and the Southern Ocean's still very stormy, and that's why we're still getting all of these westerlies and showers, and why we haven't switched to summer yet. Some years the highs come straight in by now, and we're into summer. This year is perhaps more traditional how it should be.
Yeah, exactly. So thunderstorms and hail, hopefully those all sorted before the weekend. But just a question, if spring is winter's trying to hang on in there, and you said December is going to be a little bit more spring-like than summer-like, does that push everything back? I know it doesn't work like this. It's not. It doesn't fit into neat little boxes. But by the time we're getting towards later summer, we can have those wonderful childhood memories of tar stuck to your feet and prickles on the lawn and all that type of stuff. Some of that good stuff still to come a little bit later in summer.
Yeah, may well do. It depends on where you live, though, because the weather pattern we're seeing now is spring-like.
Yep.
As we go into December, the longer days means the heat comes in more and more. So even though it might be a bit unsettled, the extra warmth generally tends to calm things down a wee bit
Yep.
into our summer, because we're in a temperate climate. We're not tropical, so we don't seem to get as many storms when that happens. There isn't really a connection between how the season starts as to how it ends
Yep.
so much. But what we look for is the big climate drivers. And so that is things like El Nino and La Nina. At the moment, we are in a neutral weather pattern. We've been there since April. That's the reason why we're having such a traditional winter and spring this year, because there's nothing really big out there pushing something else into our part of the world. But as we go more into summer, we may be seeing sort of an El Nino weather pattern. And if you're wondering what that feels like, it's a little bit like what we've been getting for the last month or so.
Yeah.
So we may well go into a hotter, drier summer, but whether or not that's affecting places like Auckland and Wellington and Taranaki, New Plymouth, big centres like that on the western side. Wellington's a tricky one because it can be all directions, but it's in El Nino, it tends to be more westerly. So those areas may be cloudier and windier and cooler. So to get that tar seal melt and the melting ice creams and the prickles on your feet, might be more of a Bay of Plenty Nelson thing. Those
exactly
more sheltered to the westerlies. But we'll wait and see. It's hard. I don't believe in long-range forecasting for New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's generally pretty rubbish. But I do see this pattern carrying on, this more traditional pattern carrying on.
And hey, there's a reason why we, as a nation, all tend to flock to the East Coast beaches for the summer holidays, after all. Phil, of course, we can keep up to date with what is developing at weatherwatch.co.nz. Thanks so much for what you do. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe, and those interviews will come